The psychological divorce and the legal divorce go hand in hand. I'm convinced, you know, law school will tell you it's 100% about the legal divorce, but I'm convinced it's about 20%. Really, it's not that it's not important, but that's really not the crux of what people go through when they get divorced. And like I said before, you know, you don't get married as a business decision, at least most people don't. And so treating it as a business dissolution in a marriage just isn't conducive to that. And people don't, it doesn't resonate with people, and I think that's where people get into trouble. Next page. That we'll talk with the dispute resolution associate, who's been the person who's had contact with people. And as we do the orientations and stuff, we'll start taking notes, because sometimes it'll be 2 or 3 months before people come back. And so a lot of times Linda will have had some contact that we haven't been privy to. And it's so interesting that clients think they're going to tell her something she's not going to tell us, right? So, but okay, like you go ahead and believe that. You know, we make sure that the physical environment is set up such that people are really feeling welcome and ready to go, and that you're doing your best to make people feel at home, and also that it is a safe place to be. And not necessarily in the first session, but certainly in the second or third session, we'll spend some time reviewing the file and setting our hypothesis for what we think we need to be ready for, what the next issues are going to be, and so forth. When we do our mediation summary letters, we will you know, set out what we intend the next agenda to be, so that we do have that as a record going forward. Let me skip to when we're doing the actual intake and the first mediation session. When you're doing an effective intake, and this is probably the most complicated thing we're going to cover today, and we'll get to our role play probably in a half hour or so. So this is going to be a big piece of it. So wake up, everyone. So doing an effective intake, you're going to hear a lot in beginning mediator classes about venting. I got to tell you, I don't think that having people just start off with everything I hate about you is really very productive. And I remember one of my very first mediations, it seemed like such a nice couple. Why did you get, you know, why are you here? Why are you getting divorced? And, well, he had an affair and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, you know what? I'm an attorney. I don't really know what to do with that information. So, you know, in attorney school, you're taught to not ask a question that you don't already know the answer to. And I think in mediator school, we're going to teach the attorneys not to ask a question that you don't know what you're going to do with the answer. You don't need to know the answer, but if you don't know what you're going to do with the answer, then I would look twice at asking the question to begin with. Like, what was I going to do? What was I going to do with why are you getting divorced, when it doesn't really matter in the mediation? It's very different, like for Tara, who's a therapist, who may be able to do something with that information, but I personally was not prepared to deal with it. So I think as you're designing your own intake protocols, you want to keep that in mind. You know, my 2 cents for opening statements, and you'll hear a lot about this in mediator school too, is that nobody's listening to the other side. They're just waiting for their turn to talk. If they are listening to the other side, they're just getting more angry and entrenched, and that opening statements often can make things worse. And don't tell anyone we said this. You participated in a mediation as a client. Did you find that the opening statements were enlightening and helpful?
I don't even remember the opening statements, because I already knew what the issues were, and it didn't matter what the opening statements were to me as a client.
So that's about as good as it got. It was a waste of time, basically.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it was helpful for the mediator to understand it if he had not done his homework, but the clients certainly knew what the issues were, because we'd been fighting over this stuff for 2 years.